Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. Welcome to March, everybody. This is Biz Buzz with Bruno. I'm your host, Michael Bruno, and always it's presented by the fabulous Madison Theatre. And today I'm so excited to meet somebody who I've not met, who I can't believe I haven't met yet, but it's going to be wonderful. Please say hello to Kendra Thompson, who is the current president of Madison Theatre Guild. Hi, Kendra.
Correct. Hello. It's such a pleasure to be here and to actually meet you. I bow down.
No bowing down. No bowing down. Just sitting and having a great time.
Okay.
So for people who don't know you, like I had no idea. I mean, I've heard your name and I knew all these wonderful things about you, but I did not know who you were. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to be sitting here today.
Oh, wow. So I am originally from Madison, born and bred, and, went to West High School and participated in theater there. I was very fortunate to be able to do that because we didn't have a lot of money. I had a dad who was a detective, a mom a school teacher, so I really relied on like public education opportunities in order to perform.
Now, without giving away anything, when were you at West?
When was I at West?
Were you there when Rebecca was the drama teacher?
No, I graduated in 1988.
Oh.
Yes.
So that must have been before
I was
got
Har.
There. Oh, Stanley Har.
Stanley Har, yeah.
I remember Stanley Har.
Yeah.
I went to Edgewood. So, yeah. West was our rival school on the West side. Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no problem.
I had to get the time frame in there. Okay.
So I actually did my very first musical theater performance the summer before my freshman year at West High School. It was The Boyfriend, which to this day is one of my all-time favorite musicals. And in it, I met this young woman named Terry Atto. We were the same age and both going to West High School. We became BFFs. And Terry now is Terry Kelly and has this amazing Broadway career.
I love Terry Kelly.
You know Terry?
I interviewed her when she came to Madison.
She is one of my very dear friends.
So talented.
She is obnoxiously talented. And it actually was the summer before my freshman year that I realized there's something I can do. I love this. I love theater. I really I'd been exposed to it by my parents, but I didn't know I could do it. And I was like, this is what I need to do. I was not an athlete at all. I was a bookworm. And so I found what I loved. And I did theater all through high school. When I went to college at the UW, I was only able to be in one production, but it was the most fabulous production at MATC. Was Fiddler on the Roof, which is one of my all-time favorite musicals of all times. And I loved doing that. And then I got really career focused, and I sort of dropped off like the map in terms of theater for a very long time until Verona area Community Theater did a production of Steel Magnolias, and I always wanted to do that. I ended up being an L. I loved that. And then I got pregnant and again, stopped doing theater. And then I started attending this lovely church that was looking for a minister of theater. And so I wrote Christmas cantatas and I did a lot of work there. I didn't like a lot of the religious material I saw. I thought it was a little stiff and boring and not funny or fun. Mm-hmm. And so I started writing my own stuff. And so for about 6 years, I was just at High Point Church, and I was just writing Christmas cantatas and writing plays for kids and doing that and having a great time. And one of my students who went on to Wanakee Middle School. She was an 8th grader, and they found out that they lost their middle school drama director. And this young lady, Maddie, goes, well, you should call Ms. Kendra. She writes stuff for, my church, and she's a really good director. And so I get this call from the principal of Wanakee Middle School saying, could you step in and do this? And there is a theme to this, which you will learn. I'm very adamant about creating opportunities for storytellers to tell stories. And when I found out that there was going to be a 7th, 8th grade class that weren't going to be able to do a play, and I was like, these are a youth, this is the time we're trying to introduce them to theater and to become enthusiasts or to become future storytellers or patrons, or I'm like, I have to do this. And so I started at Wanakee Middle School, and I directed there for over 12 years.
So why weren't they able to do the play? They had nobody to direct it? Was
The
that it?
director, last minute, due to medical health reasons, had to bow out.
Oh.
And they couldn't find anybody. And so, yeah, I stepped in, I cobbled together a play, and we put it on. And that's how I started there. And what I loved doing there, I discovered quickly that in middle school theater, you have 18 girls audition and 2 boys. So
Yeah.
Shakespeare's comedies are absolutely fabulous and ensemble casts, and it's really easy to change around parts. And so what I started doing is I would rip apart his plays. It would be like I'd get it down to 50 minutes, and then I would keep half the elevated language, and then I would infuse modern language into the rest of it. And so every single one of my students would have an opportunity to be working with that elevated language, but then they would also have language more comfortable and recognizable to them. I called it Swift Bard Productions.
Cool.
You know, just like, and it was really interesting because I would have, I know I'm going on a tangent, sorry, but I would get these students that were like 7th, 8th grade, and they would have a monologue, and they would look at it and go, I don't understand what this says. And I'd be like, in 3 weeks, you're going to be going, how did I not understand what this says? And I remember one young lady, I mean, she almost broke down during our first rehearsal because she's like, none of this makes sense. And I'm like, relax, it's going to make sense. And 3 weeks later, she's like, can you believe I almost cried over this? But I did that for 12 years. During that period of time, I had a daughter that was training to be a professional ballet dancer at Central Midwest Ballet Academy. And we would hold our little Match to Girl performances at the Bartell. And one night I was volunteering at the Bartell on behalf of Little Matchstick Girl, and I met this gentleman named Jason Compton.
Ah, yes.
And Jason and I, Jason Compton is with Madison Shakespeare Company, and Jason and I struck up a conversation, and he found out kind of what I was doing with Shakespeare at the middle school, and he's like, well, would you ever want to talk about directing for adults? And I'm like, as in adult human beings? I've done a lot with children, and I'm like, why not? I love Shakespeare. And so we started exploring that, and I ended up directing a couple of things for Madison Shakespeare Company. And then late this summer, Annie J reached out to me, who also is with Madison Shakespeare Company, and a lot of other things. She's fabulous. And said, Madison Theatre Guild needs a new board. They need it really quickly. Can we have a conversation? And so that is how I ended up in this seat today as president of Madison Theatre Guild.
So had you served at any other boards before?
I have worked closely with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, with Madison Ballet Board, with Central Midwest Ballet Academy's board. Had I actually ever served on a board? No. Had I ever done anything in terms of local adult community theater outside of Madison Shakespeare Company? No. Am I a complete and total unknown? Yes.
Not anymore, you're not.
A whole new environment for me? Yes. Do I know what I'm doing? Of course. 100%. Have all the confidence in me, really.
Always say yes.
Always say yes.
Always say yes. Unless it's something you really can't do or you will hurt yourself.
Yeah.
then think about it.
And then say, husband, get in here. No, I'm sorry.
So, which brings us to the fact that now the Theatre Guild, which is the longest
running. I grew up watching it.
Yep, I grew up.
We could afford tickets to go to it.
Yeah, I remember when they were like $250 for musicals.
Oh my gosh.
Back in the day when I was still in high school at the old fire station, and that fire station has been a gift from the city from way back
God
before
bless them.
before all of us were around.
1967. Yeah.
So currently, Theater Guild is part of one of the participating companies of our other jewel, which is the Bartell Theater.
Yes.
So obviously, as you know, as the ups and downs and people and come and go and do things, when you first decided, okay, I'm going to take on this role as not only just being on the board, but being the president of the board, did you have any focus or idea what you wanted to do at that time? Or did you just jump in thinking, I'm just going to take this job and go with it?
So I had looked at it enough to understand there were a couple of really serious issues, because you first have to ask the question. I have to admit, I first had to ask the question, is it worth it to have Madison Theatre Guild? There are some really good local community theater companies. Is it worth it? And then I did a little bit of research, and I'm like, they're a primary resident company at Bartell Theater. Bartell Theater needs primary resident companies. If Bartell Theater loses one, what is that going to do to Bartell Theater? And then the other thing, which just I've had an emotional connection to since I was in high school at West, is the firehouse. It is so hard for local community theaters to have rehearsal spaces, set design spaces, costuming spaces. God bless the city of Madison for giving that valuable real estate to Madison Theatre Guild so that it can be protected and preserved, not just for Madison Theatre Guild, but for other local community theater companies to use for costuming, for set design, for props, for furniture. I mean, it really is valuable. And what if Madison Theatre Guild goes away, that space goes away too. And can the local community theater afford to lose that? And so, you look at it from that perspective and you go, no, we want Bartell to succeed. In order for Bartell to succeed, their primary theater companies need to succeed. We want community theater to have spaces and places to do what they need to do. To lose that would be devastating to our ecosystem. And I'm actually just thinking of, we have a lovely local church that is letting us rehearse Arsenic and Old Lace, Heritage on Whitney Way. And I remember the first time we were checking out the space, just our fabulous stage manager, Jan, one of the questions she asked, and it just made so much sense that she asked it. And the gentleman who was showing us around his church and what we can use and what we cannot kind of looked at her dumbfounded, and I'm like, he doesn't understand because he's a muggle. But Jan goes, is this a safe place, or do you have break-ins or robberies?
Wow.
And he was like, well, no, it's safe. It's a very safe, nice strip molly area. Yeah, you're going to be okay. And I'm just going, he doesn't understand that that's something that, is, as women in theater and as you're constantly worried, is the space I'm going to go to, is it going to be a safe space for me? So that is just another reason that the firehouse is a blessing. It's in such a beautiful neighborhood. It's in a safe space. And, we have costumers that sometimes it's 8:00 at night when they're swinging by to pick something up. And, we want to make sure it's in a nice place. And so as I considered, should Madison Theatre Guild be saved, it was on the rocks, as most community theater companies are right now, because COVID just completely bitch slapped all of them. True. I mean, just gut punched them, stabbed them in every single flippin' artery you could stab them in. And so you're like, so do you let it go and let something else come up? But then you're like, what could we lose? We could lose the Bartell. We could lose the firehouse. And so I came in thinking, okay, what can I do first and foremost to help preserve the firehouse? We need a new roof, and it's going to cost $50,000. And so, okay, I need to figure out what I can do to secure funding for that. And so we're doing sort of a stealth funding campaign for that right now, and I'm talking with people about how we can raise money for that. Of course, I couldn't step into this role and also put on a production because I was learning too much, and I also had to create a board. And so I am so grateful to Bartell Theater, who is like, we don't want to lose a primary theater company. We don't want to lose Madison Theatre Guild. So the Bartells stepped up, and Steve Knoll, who is the vice president, he was going to do a fundraising production for the Bartell Theater. And Steve and the Bartell board agreed that instead of doing it for the Bartell, they would do it for Madison Theatre Guild. So really, this production of Arsenic and Old Lace that I'm so proud of and excited for, this is a gift from the Bartell fundraising organization. I mean, they are doing this as a gift to us while we are organizing funding in order to preserve the firehouse.
So now, the city of Madison actually does own the land and own the building.
They own the land,
right.
They own the building, but the contract states that we are responsible for preserving
right.
it. And part of preserving that now is getting a new roof on.
It just makes me wonder if there is some way to get the city to cough up some money to preserve that kind of thing. I'll have to make a couple of phone calls.
Ooh, you can do that. And just to let you know, I have some very generous donors who are really interested in preserving the firehouse. That I'm going to be really excited to announce shortly that are definitely willing to put money forward and want to make sure that this happens.
That's wonderful.
So yes, and if we could have some help along the way. One of the other things that just needs to be done is the firehouse does need to be purged, which is going to be a huge project. We have a lot of costumes that no longer fit people from our age and stage in life. You know, they're costumes that are vintage and gorgeous and beautiful, but back when people were super teeny tiny, and they
can't all be Ariana Grande coming in.
Yeah, and honestly, it's like there are high schoolers and middle schoolers that can't fit in these. You know, it's just like nutrition has changed.
Right.
You know, bone structure has changed. All of that has changed. And so people in the 1950s, they had very different, you know, builds than we have now. And so, yeah.
It's also amazing to me that those things are so as preserved as they are.
And some of them aren't. What's really sad is that some of them, it's
those,
like, no.
Yeah, those can go.
this isn't going to work anymore. I mean, it was at one point in time beautiful. In fact, okay, one of the fun things we're doing as like a fundraiser for preserving the firehouse, we are going to do a vintage clothing and costume sale April 12th and 13th. At the firehouse, and we're just opening our doors, and we are going to have Xerox all over the place of different clothing and costumes. I mean, there are going to be people that are going to come in that love vintagey stuff that are going to be able to pick up like a kick butt dress for $15 that they can play around and do things with. And we're going to have a $5 corner where people can find things for like $5.
Nice.
We are going to, I don't understand what happened. When I first took over as president, I walked through the costume department, the costume shop, and once upon a time, all of our gorgeous hats were hanging from the ceilings. They're now like shoved into boxes all over the place, and half of them are smashed up.
Oh.
So we're just gonna have like a fun hat sale. And because some of them, you know, just you're not going to be able to use them anymore. Right. But who knows? Somebody else maybe like this would be a fun Halloween costume, or, you know, we can dress this up for like a bridal party in Nashville. I mean, you can just, there's anything, everything.
Zombie weddings. Where they're all kind of torn apart.
Seriously.
Digging them up out of the grave.
Seriously.
So, now, for the longest time, the costume shop had its own life. I mean, it was run as a rental space. Is there no one doing that anymore?
I remember that.
Was it Marie? Was it? Didn't Marie run the costume?
Yes, Marie did.
Yeah. And
I just met Marie a couple weeks ago. There is a lot of history behind what happened, and I think Marie made a wise choice to be like, I think I'm over and out. I would love us to get back to a point that we could do that we could do rentals. I don't know when the last time was we actually did a rental.
Yeah, it has to be way pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's got to be pre-COVID.
But first, we need to make the costumes that can be usable accessible.
True.
And
that's a big job, too.
And that is we are getting a dumpster this spring. And so what can't be donated will just be thrown out. We should really have only a third of what we have right now. And so we need to figure that out. And we have a board, a very young, vibrant board that are like, let us at it. Let us do this.
Great. That's what you need.
And so, yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Excellent. So now we've talked about you. We've talked about how you got to the place where you are. We've talked about Madison Theatre Guild. Let's talk about the current production a little bit more, about Arsenic and Old Lace. So I'm assuming that this was Steve's idea to do the show, because I know that's been like, tinkling around in his brain for a while.
He actually wanted to do a different show.
Oh, really?
Arsenic and Old Lace is something that we I don't know which one of us came up with it first, but we were talking about my vision for Madison Theatre Guild going forward. And one of the things I looked at as I looked back over like the last 5 to 6 year period, I saw Madison Theatre Guild sort of going, I don't want to say off course, but just they were going very, very contemporary. Okay. And Mercury Theater already does that beautifully.
Right.
And Madison Public Theaters, formerly Strollers, they're now Madison Public Theater. I love that name. They do a lot of contemporary, more American. And Madison Shakespeare Company does amazing Shakespeare. And then Stage Q really has that LGBTQ niche that I have no business being in the middle of. So I'm like, where can Madison Theatre Guild fit into that without encroaching and diluting? And I started looking back over old MTG plays, and I was like, they did like mysteries and funny stuff, and they were almost like the Nordstroms. You can take Grandpa there to get his sweater. You can take Junior there for the jeans. You can take your little Missy there to get her prom dress. You can go there to get a suit for your husband, and pantyhose. It's like it fits
for your husband.
Everywhere. For your husband, yes. And so it's like the family can go there and you can find something. And so I was talking to Steve about how, like, I want to get back to that with Madison Theatre Guild, where we're doing things where it's like, yeah, I can take my grandpa, or yeah, I can take my first date, or yeah, I can take my 13-year-old son. And so we're really looking at plays that, such as Arsenic and Old Lace, which, by the way, every single person I've talked to about it is like, oh, I love that. The only time they've seen it performed is either in the movie or by a high school. And we have like the actual adults that are age appropriate doing
adults.
it. They're adults.
God.
Well, I mean, I do have some questions. Sorry, Ethan, I'm not totally sure you're an adult.
Yeah, knowing this cast, I think there are a couple I could debate.
Yeah, I'm like,
yeah.
But yeah, actual adults doing like the age appropriate parts, and it's just so fabulous. But that's the vibe I wanted. And so we started talking about what we could do, that it would be funny. It would be something that a 13-year-old could go to and, in spite of him or herself, end up laughing. Something that a grandparent could be like, I remember seeing that and want to go see something that just like a 50-year-old person like me could be like, I've only ever seen it done by high school students, and I love that play. So yeah, that's how we kind of came to this. And of course, Steve, this was one of the plays on his bucket list to do. And he immediately got excited in that meeting that we were having at Aaron Snug Pub. The first time I actually met with him one-on-one, he just started going off about all these different things that he could do. And I'm like, dude, this play is meant for you. And it really was. I mean, we had over 60 people audition.
That's great.
It was a crazy audition. And we have the most talented cast. It breaks my heart thinking about some of the people that didn't make it, because we had such talented auditioners. And it was like, oh my gosh, letting this person go. Yeah. You know, in the back of my mind, I'm like, please still love me. Please still want to do something. You're amazing. But he really did assemble this like gorgeous cast. And the show is just, I've been watching rehearsals. It's just so fun to watch it. It is in the rehearsal process. I'm like, there aren't the sets, there aren't the costumes. You know, Joshua right now is walking around in like his weird kerchief, sorry Joshua, over his head with his Hello Kitty like sweatshirt on, and I'm like, he's so awesome. Not even costumed yet. I mean, it's wonderful. It is wonderful. I'm so grateful to Steve. I'm grateful to the Bartell, and the Bartell is going to start doing more of this. They are creating their own sort of, under Stephanie Monday, they're creating their own fundraising fund to be able to help out, you know, primary theater companies and help out the Bartell Theater and reinvigorate the Bartell Theater. So this is just the beginning of what Bartell is going to do in terms of ensuring that there is local community theater that is preserved.
So does Theatre Guild now have a play reading and a play selecting committee, or is it all done by the board?
So it's all done by the board right now, because we're not even close to having that infrastructure yet. But if there's anyone that is interested at all, we would love that. We definitely have ideas. Mm-hmm. And we already have for our next season, we are going to do The Ideal Husband by Oscar Wilde, although it may be a more modern adaptation since it's public domain.
That's right. No royalties there, baby.
No, yeah. I'm going to be able to kind of cut that thing apart, and maybe it's going to take place in Washington, D.C. I love Ideal Husband. Importance of Being Earnest, of course, is a delight. Ideal Husband's a bit darker, but I think it's more true to like who Oscar Wilde was and what he was experiencing. And then we are doing The Egg and Butter Man by Kaufman, which people may be like, what is that? To which I respond, do you know Mel Brooks is the producers? Because if you know that, you are going to love this. It's where he got his idea. And again, that's now a public domain. So for next year, we're looking at not spending money purchasing plays, spending money producing the plays. And we're choosing plays that are funny, that, again, family friendly, that have really strong characters, that have gorgeous witty language. And just going back to Arsenic and Old Lace, it is amazing. I've seen the play, I've watched the movie, and I sit through these rehearsals, and every night I'm catching something else that I'm like, that is an ingenious line. It is so funny. And that's what's so delightful about the kind of plays that we're going to be choosing. The language is going to be very clever. It's going to be very funny. And we need clever, funny, lovely language. And hopefully it will get people coming into the theater with their families. We want them to do that.
Absolutely.
Come to us. Get off your couches, people. Don't Netflix and binge. You did that during COVID. You need us. We need you.
Speaking of which, we were talking earlier, and I want to bring something because I can't believe it passed my radar. Talk to me about the collaboration that you did during COVID with Ben.
Oh, with Ben. Okay.
And with the Madison Savoyards.
Okay. So, my daytime job, my grown-up job, I am director of operations at Central Midwest Ballet Academy. We are a classical ballet academy training dancers 8 to 18. At our pre-pro level, we are training them to dance professionally. And we already have dancers across the country that are dancing in ballet companies. We're very proud of that. When COVID hit, we had a bunch of really devastated young dancers. They had just found out we could not do our little Matchstick Girl Ballet, which is an annual event akin to what the Nutcracker would be for a lot of ballets. And so we were trying to think of a creative way to do something. Adam Shelton, who I know, just like one of the best human beings on the face of the earth.
Dr. Shelton, my love.
Oh, seriously. I adore you, Adam. He had been on the board of Central Midwest Ballet when we started. And so Molly reached out to Adam and was like, would Madison Savoyards be interested in doing something with us? And then I had been fortunate enough to work with Upstart Crows Productions. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to Bonnie of Upstart Crows and I'm like, could we get some actors, to do some Shakespeare stuff? And so we did what we called the Winter Arts Mosaic, where we did a fusion of ballet, classical ballet, Shakespeare, and opera. And then Madison Savoyards, we know this really talented Gilbert and Sullivan-esque musician who can create an original music piece for Madison Savoyards to do. So I called Dane Arts. I'm like, Dane Arts, please, please, please give us money so we can afford this man. And they did. And so we had this gorgeous piece created that Madison Savoyards sang to, that our dancers danced to, that our Upstart Crows people acted to. I mean, it was just a fabulous, fabulous piece. And then we sold virtual tickets and we promoted between Madison Savoyards, between Central Midwest Ballet, between Upstart Crows. And we made a nice little chunk of money that allowed both Madison Savoyard and allowed Central Midwest Ballet and allowed Upstart Crows Productions to have some money in the coffers when money wasn't coming into the coffers because there was COVID. It also gave our storytellers an opportunity to tell stories. And so here's my thing on storytellers. So I come at it, I'm a Catholic. I come at it from a Catholic background. In Catholicism, we believe in vocations. There are callings, and those callings, they are God callings. You are created to do this thing. I have yet to meet someone who's a good actor who just hasn't felt compelled towards storytelling. Now, whether you believe in God or not, I don't care. But these people that you meet, they are compelled to do it. And when they are starved of that opportunity, you just watch them wither into themselves in states of anxiety. And so I was so grateful for that opportunity to give our young adults, to give Madison Savoyards an opportunity to do something to share their storytelling. And the other thing about storytellers is I'm so glad they feel compelled to do it, because we as human beings, we were born for stories. We were born to hear stories, That's part of our soul. The fabric of it is. That's part of what makes us good human beings, is that we're raised hearing stories of how to, be good human beings. It's part of what informs us what to be careful of in the world, what to watch out for. It's all through storytelling, and we need our storytellers. And so as much as the storytellers need to be telling stories, there's also an audience out there like that's desperate for them. And so now you can see why I ended up being like a sucker and being like, yeah, I'll be president of Madison Theatre Guild. It's like, I don't want the storytelling opportunities to go away.
Well, they're number one, they're incredibly lucky to have you. Incredibly
That's
lucky
sweet.
to have you.
You know what?
Because they need people who have that kind of vocation and have that drive and the energy to sustain that, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of, like I said, there's a past history and it's like a roller coaster. There are times when the Theater Guild was way up here, and there are times you can see it kind of like sliding down, and there are times when it's right about in the middle, and it's one of the, like you say, it's the oldest one and it's the most consistently produced. Community theater and a lot of the other companies are branched out. They're the children of the Madison Theatre Guild.
I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, because I've started getting to know the other primary resident companies. When you're a primary resident company at Bartell Theater, you also sit on the Bartell Theater board. I don't think there's a single person on the board that wasn't at one point in time working at or with Madison Theatre Guild. Yeah. And so you are correct about that. And so I come in fortunate. I am so fortunate to have a lot of people around who are like, what can I do to help you be successful? And I'm also really fortunate, also on the board, somebody that's worked with Madison Theatre Guild for quite a long time, Patrick Stockland. Oh my gosh, he's going to be so upset that I mentioned his name. This is a guy that does not want attention. He's like, no.
Too bad, Patrick. You've been
Sorry,
outed.
Patrick. I called you out. I mean, he is amazing. He is our treasurer. And when I first walked through Madison Theatre Guild, I said to Patrick, I go, the set design place is a disaster. We need to figure out a way to organize this. And Patrick goes, I know a guy. He actually had a plan for organizing this, for like building flats, for making it organized. And I could bring him in and he might be convinced to do it. And so a couple weeks later, this guy named Chad Abel comes in, who's my hero. He's my hero. Isn't he amazing? Love you, Chad. So he came in and he's like, you need to do this, and this. And if you don't do this, it's not worth it. And I'm like, okay. And he did it. And our set design space, within like 2 months, it's not even close to being where it's going to be at. Oh my gosh, it's so much better.
Wow, that's great.
It's so much better. I'm like, we actually have a set design space for our set designers. And so next goal is to purge the costume closets and organize the space, because I want that second floor, that big room, to also be a rehearsal space. We need rehearsal spaces.
That's a great
We
idea.
can have some costumes on the periphery.
Yeah, that's a
but
great.
I want it gutted so that people can rehearse there.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Because we have all those other rooms to store costumes in.
I know, exactly.
We have all those other rooms.
And we don't need 850 tuxedos. I counted like 9 million fur coats from Gimbals that are like the short 1950s ones.
Yeah.
We don't need all of those.
That's true.
We don't. We need to let stuff go. We need to Elsa it. Let it go. Let it go.
That's for
We're
you,
gonna
honey.
do it. That's our theme. So we can have that, so that we're reclaiming a set design space so that it can be utilized by people. We're gonna reclaim the costume space so that when you come in and you do want a costume, you're like, I can see this is the selection. And then if it's not there, you got to go elsewhere. Right. And we want to make sure that there's a rehearsal space. There's got to be.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So, and then what we also just need to do is, the firehouse does have a burn rate of about $20,000 a year. And that's with us paying $1 a year lease to the city. But that's gas, electricity, that is maintenance of the building. We need to start letting the community know, who in it can donate annually a certain amount of money to just go to preserving the firehouse. We need to be able to do that, especially since one of my goals is to make sure that, especially the primary resident companies at Bartell, I don't want them, because they're in the same boat Madison Theatre Guild is in, I don't want them to have to be renting costumes from us. They should feel like, I have a key. I can go in. There is an organized way for me to find the costumes I want, for Madison Theatre Guild to check them out, and for me to just use them. We have to figure out a way in order to do this. I don't think it used to be, looking at the books, Madison Theatre Guild would make $10,000 to $15,000 annually on costume rental. I don't think that's possible anymore with Amazon.
Right. Well,
it just isn't. So we need to recognize that this is a space that we're going to have to go to the local arts community and be like, help us fund the preservation of this building for the good of all local community theater. And we need to make sure that we don't let it fall into decline, which I think there have been some people in denial about that happening, and they've just kind of ignored the fact that it needed a new roof and it needed new plastering, and we can't ignore that. It was gifted to us by the city of Madison on a contracted lease with the understanding that we would preserve it, and we need to preserve it, and we need to be honorable about that. And we can't lose this space. It's too critical to community theater. And, just again, so much of the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing is because of how much I believe in community theater. Within our community, we have fabulous storytellers, and part of the joy they have in their lives is being able to tell stories, all different kinds of stories. Some of them are funny and delightful and lovely. Some of them are absolutely horrible and terrible, and it actually ravages their hearts while they're telling them, but they're important to tell. And we need to have a place and a space for them to go to do that. And we also need to have an inexpensive place and space for people to go and experience community theater. The Overture is fabulous and glorious, and there's so much about that is outstanding. But you can't afford to spend $250 or $85 constantly on tickets to go see shows there unless all of your money is going to that, or you are in a certain income bracket, and so community theater gives that other outlet. And community theater is also a place where edgier stuff happens. God bless Merck Theater. I mean, they do it. And thank goodness for Stage Q. I mean, they're doing really interesting work that is not happening in the Overture.
True.
And so you really need that community theater ecosystem so that more stories can get told, so that a diverse array of stories can get told, not just the ones that Overture knows it's going to sell out. Book of Mormon is great, and you want people to be able to see Hamilton and Madison. But, you also want people to be able to see things that would not sell, like Hamilton. And you want, so one of the super cool things that I'm discovering at Bartell is there's a theater class at the UW, and the professor requires students to attend Bartell Theater Productions. And I was at one of the Bartell Theater Productions working box office when this whole group of students came in because they were required to attend Wintertime that Madison Public Theater was putting on. Intermission comes around, and first of all, I hear two young ladies talking, and the one goes, so this is funnier than I thought it was going to be. Which, if you are speaking sorority girl, 20-year-old-ish is I'm laughing and enjoying myself, just to let you all know. So then another guy comes out and he's like, I'd like to sign out because the professor requires before they leave the show that they sign out. And I'm like, but the show isn't done. And he's like, what do you mean it isn't done? He thought intermission it was done.
Wow.
So then I'm explaining to this kid, no, it's intermission. There's still another half. You can leave if you want. But just to let you know, you watched the majority of the play, and now you're going to leave, and the second half of it is going to be shorter, and you're not going to get any credit. And he's like, but what? The curtain closed. I mean, he was just like so confused.
Wow.
That's community theater, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And, you know, we were talking earlier about my daughter, Madeline, who ended up getting a scholarship to University of Texas at Austin to train in their acting conservatory. And she actually performed with Ben in Aborophilia and performed with Sarah in Aborophilia. And, you know, she was a 17-year-old young woman who really wanted to do theater. And it was an amazing opportunity for her, community theater, to meet just some really great people that encouraged her and that promoted that for her. And I will just always love Sarah, although I've only met her in passing, because she politely informed my daughter, Madeline, that what looks like a breakout theatrical career usually has 10 years of rejection behind it. And, you know, my daughter has since graduated and is spending her first year as a starving actor in New York, getting tons of rejection. And she's just like, I have to remember what Sarah told me. And I mean, that happened from community theater. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole mentorship aspect of community theater. You know, if you want the next generation of theater enthusiasts, patrons, if you want the next generation of storytellers, you can't lose community theater. That's what the Bartell's about. That's what Madison Theatre Guild's about. That is why we want to sell out Arsenic and Old Lace. Please help us sell out Arsenic and Old Lace. Feel free to donate to the preservation of our firehouse. You can go right to MadisonTheatreGuild.org, and we have a yellow donate button, and you hit that and say we're preserving the firehouse. Come to our costume sale in April.
I don't even have to say any of that now, because she just wrapped up the entire segment for me. So do what she said, because we love her, and we love our community theaters. We love the Theatre Guild. We love the Bartell. We're so you know, grateful to have those things in our community in Madison, because Madison, you know, obviously I grew up here and have seen when Madison Theatre was the only thing you could do in community theater. It was the first and the oldest. Yeah. And that was it. And now we have these wonderful companies, and we have so many wonderful, talented people. And you're right, we need to nurture them, and we need to make sure that they not necessarily stay here, but while they're here, have an opportunity to tell their stories.
Exactly.
And that's really, really, really important. So I really thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for the invitation.
See, now we're best friends. Now,
I know.
See, I told you.
Let's do drinks sometime.
How easy it is. Wonderful. Make sure you get your tickets to Arsenic and Old Lace. Support your local theater community theaters. Support the Bartell, and support Madison Theatre Guild. And as usual, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ben. I'm Michael Bruno. We'll see you next time on Showbiz Buzz with Bruno.
Bye.